All right, so today we have Shelby Heinecke, Senior Research Manager at Salesforce. So, Shelby, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Ben. Really excited to be here today.
All right, so I guess we'll start with the hot topic of the year, which happened to be the hot topic of last year, which is agents, right?
Oh, okay.
So, I
Yeah.
have a few topics around agents that I wanted to discuss with you. The first one is it seems like one emerging trend, Shelby, is that these agents are now increasingly capable of doing GUI-based interactions.
Yeah.
Is this my imagination, or is are the foundation models have they made recent progress to allow this to happen?
Yeah. I think the research community has made tremendous progress to allow to make this happen. I think there's a couple of core pieces of technology there. I think on one hand, we've made tremendous progress on what we call function calling. So as you can imagine, say a user wants to accomplish something, whether it's in a GUI or whether it's not in a GUI, maybe just behind the scenes. They want to accomplish sending an email, they want to accomplish completing a task. We have made so much progress in training our LLMs to call the correct functions, to write the correct API calls, to call the correct apps to do that well. So that's a key piece of technology. We saw lots of progress last year. And to give you an example of something we've spent a tremendous part of our year on. We built these what we call large action models, and they do exactly that. They focus on given a task, given the context, you know, write the plan, write the exact API calls and the function calls to execute that. So, in order to again going back to your example on navigating GUIs, this is definitely one technical piece there that given what the user wants, which functions need to be called to get there. Now that's one key piece of technology that's enabled that. Now a second piece, there's a different approach here. Now for sometimes you want to call functions behind the scenes. Now sometimes you don't know those functions a priori. So it might be helpful to learn from what you see to give this agent ability to reason about images, to reason about video. We're making a lot of progress there. So we've seen progress there last year and something, that we just released only a few weeks ago, this is one of my first times even talking about this work, is we released, told you about our large action models. We released multimodal action models. Now it's these models that take in image and text and produce API calls and produce the right function calls. And again, that makes navigating GUIs a reality as well.
And what makes this powerful is that the reality is a lot of knowledge work still relies on these GUI-based interactions. Most knowledge
Yes.
workers are not programmers or coders, so they do interact with the screen, and progress in multimodal models, visual language models, are very helpful in this regard. So, to the skeptics out there, Shelby, right? So, uh,
Yeah.
what says to you when they say, "Isn't this just robotic process automation rebranded?"
Yeah, we've been automating forever. Automation is not a new concept for any of us, right? I think what's really special is that this automation is driven by LLMs, and LLMs we've shown over the past years are just particularly powerful. The concept's not new, but I think what we're going to be able to achieve, you know, we're going to see exponential automation. I think, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and then I think also the the earlier generation of robotic process automation was very kind of tightly scripted, right?
yep,
So and in this case, as you alluded to, the idea here is if you get to these multimodal models that can see the screen,
yep,
even maybe, I mean, at some point at the pixel level, then they can really kind of understand what's happening in the screen. And now, of course, I guess the other helpful thing here, Shelby, is the fact that now we're beginning to see kind of much more of these reasoning enhanced models that can reason, right? So that can think and reason, which of
absolutely.
course comes with its downsides because the inference cost is much higher, right? So In fact,
Exactly.
I would say one of the buzzwords this year would be is inference scaling, right? So, 'cause,
Yeah.
a lot,
Inference scaling, yes. I think we're gonna see a lot more of reasoning this year as well too.
yeah, yeah, and reasoning by its by nature means a lot of compute is going to get pushed over to inference, which will make inference a lot more
Yeah.
potentially expensive, and a lot more work will need to be done to make that efficient. So, uh,
Absolutely.
I would say the combination of multimodality and reasoning enhanced models will make agents even more powerful this year, right?
Definitely, and to your point about, saving on compute, I think one thing I'm very interested in and keeping an eye on is how much reasoning can we pack into a smaller package, right? To a smaller model. So, it will be interesting to see. I think just this week, the news this week with DeepSeek, they got their reasoning model fantastic, and they also have their distilled version, so tiny version. So, haven't had a chance to play with it directly myself, but I'm very hopeful that, even in a small package, we're gonna see really impressive reasoning.
So my hands-on experience so far with DeepSeek, and which I really like actually the V3, the R1. I think if you ask it really I mean, on the benchmarks and the leaderboards like Chatbot Arena, it ranks really well. But I find that if you really ask it complicated things, it's still not there with Gemini 2.0 Flash or OpenAI.
Interesting.
But if it's a simple thing, I think it's right there and might even be better because it's faster and cheaper, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's where we are, especially with smaller models. I think smaller models every month, like the capacity, what we can achieve has been pushed. But I agree with your assessment that, smaller models, right now may not, especially when it comes to reasoning or multi-step reasoning, may not compare to large models. So, but I'm this year I'm very hopeful. I think we can really push the boundaries there. So let's see. Let's really see how far we can push these small models.
Shelby, so in your mind, what's missing from the agent stack? Well, the typical agent stack, the way people think of it, right? So you've got the model, right? So you have some notion of memory. You have tools and libraries that the
Right.
agent can call. Some
Mhm.
people use agent frameworks, right? So,
Yeah.
and obviously, this is a piece of software. You need monitoring and observability, and you need to work on hosting and serving and all. I mean, it's machine learning at some level, but I think in my mind, one of the things that makes this a little more challenging right now, one, obviously, everything depends on the model's capabilities.
Of course.
Secondly, there's a lot of fragmentation because I, in my best guesstimate, is there's 400 startups and vendors building agent tools,
So many.
and no
Yeah.
one is using, and the vocabulary is still a bit uh, unclear how people talk about it,
Yeah.
right? So they might be referring to the same thing. So I think there's a lot of reinventing the wheel right now. So when you build agents right now, where do the agents usually fall short? I guess let's put it that way.
Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, this is such an active area of research. There's a lot we could talk about here. I mean, we could just, for example, we could just focus even on the model side. I
Yeah.
think, for example, there's a lot of room for improvement for even function calling and multi-step function calling. So, for example, if you follow the Berkeley function calling leaderboard, this is like one of the widely acknowledged leaderboards for function calling. Earlier in the year, it was focusing on single step function calls, but now they've expanded their evaluation to be multi-step and to have even more complex cases. And that again, that basically gives us new problems or expands our horizons. And of course, models that were good at one that may have been good in one step, maybe fall short in those multiple steps. So I think continuing to push the boundaries on what's possible for multi-step function calling is definitely something the community should continue to push forward. I also think going back to what we mentioned earlier about the smaller models, I think especially as we think about deploying these AI agents, I think we're going to want to start thinking about that. And especially as we think about deploying agents that are solving complex tasks that take multiple steps. because smaller models, of course, you're gonna, multiple steps, we're gonna need to care about efficiency a lot more, cost to serve a lot more. But latency, that's the other thing, latency. We talked about that with increased reasoning abilities, potentially latency increases. But with smaller models, if you've got a 10-step process, you want each of those steps to go pretty quickly so that the customer or anyone, the end user, isn't waiting forever.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the O'Reilly Podcast, Generative AI in the Real World. If you want to listen to the full version, please log in to the platform at O'Reilly.com.